Hello everyone, this is Joshua Smith of Apollo's Artifacts. Just to begin here, I want to let you know what my strategy is for right now. Since the rules at YouTube are constantly changing and their enforcement is completely arbitrary and capricious, I'm going to put the things that I think are safe for YouTube up on my first upload, and then for the second half of the show, all of those things that I think are not safe for YouTube, I'll upload to Rumble and Brighteon. Alright, so to get this news roundup started, I begin here with one from Zero Hedge. Article headline, 89 Africans killed by mysterious new illness emerging in South Sudan. Just as the latest Delta-driven wave of SARS-CoV-2 washes over parts of the U.S. that already benefit from some of the country's highest vaccination rates, the WHO has dispatched an advanced team of researchers and doctors to South Sudan, where, by the way, China has made heavy infiltrations over the last 10 years, situated in northern Africa, where 89 people have been killed already by some strange new virus. South Sudan's Ministry of Health reported that an unknown disease had killed scores of people in the northern town of Fangak in Jonglei State, so the WHO dispatched a team to the area, which is one of the worst hit places on the entire continent to be afflicted by a recent severe flooding, to collect samples from sick people. From there, we bounce over to this outrageous news from Natural News. California school districts phase out D and F grades in bizarre effort to claim public school pandemic-era students are not failing. And actually, this is part of a much broader trend to get rid of standardized testing altogether. There are a number of universities across the United States that have dropped standardized testing in the form of ACTs and SAT score requirements, and some of those are even dropping GPA requirements. And what they're favoring are particular races and ethnicities. It's all part of a woke trend and the hatred of Western civilization itself. And ultimately, things like that will lead to the death and destruction of Western civilization. And all of this nonsense has been pouring forth from the universities, which are completely toxic and full of brain viruses from the left. From there, go to this bizarre article in the Daily Mail. They'll take your liver and you won't even know. China's real-life Squid Game, how organs are harvested from thousands every week for a kill-to-order market, and why the world is powerless to stop it. And when people hate a person like LeBron James, this is one of the main reasons why they hate a person like him, because he props up communist China and says absolutely nothing whatsoever about this, but he'll go out and brazenly attack a person who acts in self-defense, calls them racist and all this other nonsense, and the guy doesn't even know what he's talking about, of course. And in related news, this is from Christianity Daily. UN report shows evidence China is harvesting organs from detained Christians and other minorities. And it's always surprising and shocking when the UN tells the truth about anything, but they actually do cover this, but they don't really have any plans to do anything about it. UN human rights experts said that they have reliable evidence regarding organ harvesting targeting minorities in prison in China, including Falun Gong practitioners, Uyghurs, Tibetans, Muslims, and Christians. According to a press release from the UN Human Rights Office of the High Commissioner, detainees may be forced to submit to blood tests and organ exams like ultrasound and x-rays without their permission, whereas other inmates are not obliged to do so. The test findings are allegedly entered into a database of live organ sources, and that is of course so that wealthy elites from all around the world can buy up the organs that they need. They'll have these people slaughtered and take theirs, and no one will ever know the difference. And this news is a little bit old, but it's still important because it could come back to bite us later on. From the Daily Mail, FBI launch urgent probe after smallpox is found in Merck facility in Philadelphia while cleaning out a freezer. Disease is so deadly, samples are only supposed to be kept in 2 labs in the entire world. And this is a virus that killed 300 million people in the 1900s. And you'll notice here I've been able to actually find some interesting news about China from left-wing sources in America, which is really surprising. Here from NPR, China wants your data and may already have it. It begins here. As COVID cases began to rise a year ago, a Chinese company contacted several U.S. states and offered to set up testing labs. As a byproduct, the Chinese firm, Beijing Genomics Institute, would likely gain access to the DNA of those tested. The offer was tempting for states struggling to set up their own testing facilities for a new virus on short notice, but U.S. national security officials urged the states to reject the offer, citing concerns about how China might use personal data collected on Americans. And remember, I've covered in an earlier episode showing where China was actually gathering up this information all across the continent of Africa, because you have the largest variety of DNA, the greatest differentials in DNA in the entire world are found on the African continent. And of course, they're doing that not for nice and friendly and good reasons. It says here, Beijing Genomics Institute, a major global player in the world of genomics research, reportedly set up labs in at least 18 other countries and provided COVID testing kits to 180 nations, including the United States. A bit further down, it points out here, human rights groups say that the Chinese government uses DNA testing for security purposes, such as identifying and tracking Uyghur Muslims, the ethnic and religious minority whose members are being held in detention camps in huge numbers in western China. Chinese police are also working to gather DNA samples from the country's male population, numbering roughly 700 million, to help keep tabs on the half of the population supposedly most likely to commit crimes, the New York Times has reported last year. And a bit further down, it points out here, most Americans have probably had their data compromised by the cyber intelligence units of the Chinese government and Chinese military intelligence, said April Falcon Doss, who worked in the National Security Agency and wrote the book Cyber Privacy: Who Has Your Data and Why You Should Care. And things like this could be used to create race or ethno-specific bioweapons to take out particular people. And another article from townhall.com, FBI warns Los Angeles County Sheriff, Chinese company harvested employee DNA. Los Angeles County contracted Fulgent Genetics Corporation to harvest data about Wuhan coronavirus vaccination status and to administer testing for the disease. It turns out that company has direct ties to the Chinese Communist Party, and the FBI had to intervene. But of course, that would be too little too late, because they would have already gobbled up plenty of DNA data. In somewhat related news, I'll move over to The Defender from childrenshealthdefense.org. Conflict of interest. Bill Gates gave $319 million to major media outlets, documents reveal. Up until his recent messy divorce, Bill Gates enjoyed something of a free pass in corporate media. Generally presented as a kindly nerd who wants to save the world, the Microsoft co-founder was even unironically christened Saint Bill by The Guardian. While other billionaires' media empires are relatively well known, the extent to which Gates' cash underwrites the modern media landscape is not. After sorting through over 30,000 individual grants, Mint Press can reveal that the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation has made over $300 million worth of donations to fund media projects. And of course, that would go to the usual suspects: CNN, NBC, NPR, PBS, The Atlantic, so on and so forth. And you can see the figures down below to the tune of millions upon millions of dollars. And I'll move from there, since Bill Gates is all about population control matters, to an article from LifeSite News, population control advocate Jane Goodall to lecture at Catholic College. And as you can see, this was back in 2014. We have her saying here, "We support the right of women to decide whether and when to have children," but of course by that she never means abstinence. She's talking about abortion. The group that she's associated with, Population Matters, endorses contraception, abortion, and ending subsidies for large families. "We need to send a clear message that large families are unsustainable," say the dirt-worshipping kooks. And of course, they hate the Catholic Church because they fundamentally support large families. And you can go down here where the website for them points out here that Goodall herself has said this: "It's our population growth that underlies just about every single one of the problems that we've inflicted on the planet. Of course, the planet doesn't care what we inflict on it. It doesn't matter. If there were just a few of us, then the nasty things we do wouldn't really matter. And Mother Nature, and capital M, capital N, Mother Nature, by the way, would take care of it. But there are so many of us." So these people look at us as like a plague. They look at us as parasites, as a virus. They want to destroy us. Here I have another article about her from National File. Video: Jane Goodall says global issues, quote, "wouldn't be a problem if human population was 94% lower at the World Economic Forum." Now, of course, 94% lower than where we are now puts us around what the Georgia Guidestones famously call for, about 500 million people. As James Lindsay points out below here in a tweet, that would be approximately 461 million people worldwide, which of course would be a complete and utter catastrophe that would bring something like this about. Here I have an interesting article from the Gateway Pundit. "The situation is dire. Salvation Army faces holiday shortages after telling all white donors to face their racism." It begins here: "The Salvation Army asked for even more than donations this year. The Christian charitable organization asked all white donors to reflect on their racism. The Salvation Army was later forced to remove its absurd Let's Talk About Racism guide following the intense backlash over a text last week that told white donors to sincerely apologize for their racism while hinting that Christianity itself is institutionally racist." And you can see how the infection spreads from the universities, the mind virus, claptrap garbage that's spewed all over the universities to the students that they're going millions upon millions of dollars in debt for all across the country so that they can have their heads toxified by these crazed white, primarily, left-wing professors. Just remember that when you're sending little Johnny or Janie away to the university. This is the kind of trash that they're going to be told constantly. And it's going to be this kind of trash that they are tested on constantly. It's going to be what they are expected to spew back to the professors as they write their essays and papers. Also in, I would say, very similar and related news, Democrat senator speaks at award ceremony for the Communist Party. And here we see this vile creature, Richard Blumenthal of Connecticut, an absolute scumbag if ever there was one. And as we see here, this award ceremony was being used to recruit other communists. And it says a little further down, Blumenthal, and it doesn't point out in this, he actually owns a huge law firm where his son is a member of the law firm and is constantly launching lawsuits against patriots across the United States all the time. Blumenthal, one of the wealthiest members of the Senate, presented certificates of special recognition from the Senate to 3 winners of the Amistad Award, given annually by the Connecticut People's World Committee, an affiliate of the Communist Party USA and the Marxist People's World news site. And more, this kind of behavior is just becoming standard for members of the Democratic Party. What they tried to keep secret for many years is just coming out into the open. And also from the Gateway Pundit, we have here, Satanic temple lawsuits in Texas claim laws violate their religious freedom to abortion rituals. So both the left and Satanists love abortion. And as it says a bit further down here, they're quoted as saying, "The temple will work tirelessly to do our best to protect the religious rights of our members who want to engage in TST's abortion rituals." And the final article for this episode before I switch over to part 2 that will be on Rumble and Brighteon from Natural News. The linchpin in the plot to destroy every man, woman, and child in America is the mainstream media, brainwashing us with propaganda for decades and pushing America to the brink of annihilation. And this is completely and obviously true for all of the people in alternative media who are constantly and have been for 10 years or more been proclaiming the death or demise of the mainstream media. You are completely wrong. The mainstream media is still in the driver's seat. The mainstream media still gets us into wars. The mainstream media leads all of these lockdowns, the mask mandates, the vaccine mandates, so on and so forth. And that is predictably what will happen when every radio show you turn on is forced to spew mainstream media propaganda in all of their news breaks, all of the stuff coming from ABC, CBS, NBC, NPR, PBS, and every TV is standard to have those as the channels you have when you turn them on. And then even if you have cable, then you end up with CNN and MSNBC and all of the other propaganda outlets. And then everything produced by Hollywood is nothing but pure propaganda lately. And this article goes into detail here. I'll have it linked below so that you can read it for yourself, but it talks about how almost everything that comes out of mainstream media is obvious propaganda that is pre-scripted to begin with and then distributed from station to station all across America. And now I have to conclude this so that I can upload my non-YouTube safe material. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to like, subscribe, and share. Thank you.